Hey everyone, how are we doing on this very rainy day here? Heavy rain, some thunder and lightning earlier. Welcome D-Man, Mr. Hemi, JR, Angler, TNFS, Tim El Gato. Good to see you all. And hey, I figured out, I think, I'm sorry to put you through all of this, but I think I've figured out the audio thing. There was a checkbox that said share audio. So this time, hopefully it will work. So we'll just get this number started. I'll put myself on mute. You should still be able to hear the track playing. And if you would be so kind, and again, sorry to have to get you guys to do this, but if you could just let me know if there's any audio or not, or if it's too loud or something. I don't know. So we'll just get it started, and then I'll be back. Wonderful. I hope you enjoy that little number. Kind of quirky and strange. See, small increments of progress, little baby steps. The next one will be figuring out how to stop that from autoplay in the next track. So, welcome along, Silver Bullet and Rib Grunt. Good to see you. Just taking care of a little, if you want to call it admin, previously on Billy the Goat's live stream or whatever. How do I go about this before we start on the topic of co-parenting? Because I think that would be pretty helpful for a lot of people. But I want to address a little. Is it an admin thing? Is it a mod thing? If we get people coming in here and they've got legit questions, then leave them be. Please do not block them. Please do not execute or anything. If they've got legit, they want to have an honest question, then by all means they're welcome. So what I noticed in the last stream was a PJ Camel. If you're watching, you asked a question, but I think it got removed. Now I'm having to sort of go from memory and paraphrase, but it was something like you seemed a bit upset with me, sort of implying that fundamentally the narcissist doesn't really have any power over you, and you kind of reiterated that back to me with a question mark, like, what do you mean by, like, you trying to say the narcissist has no power over you? And is this like, so you're saying the victim is self-abusing? It's sort of yes and no. As always, it's not going to be an easy straight answer, really. But the tonality of the way the question is phrased, I suspect, and it's just a speculation, it doesn't have to be the case, so you don't have to argue back or anything, but there sounds an element of wanting to be a victim, wanting to be powerless because someone you perceive has done this to you. And that's a dicey stance to take. So yes, the narcissist does abuse people, and yes, you do become a victim of that abuse. But just be a bit careful. You notice how disempowering that kind of language is. So if you are a victim of such um, situations, incidents, relationships, etc., hopefully you want to really be speaking with more empowerment, and not with a kind of defeatist or learned helplessness sort of tonality, because then you'll be stuck in a victimhood situation, and that goes off into a whole bunch of other problems. So we're looking to self-improve, and if you're going to self-improve, you need to think more. You need to speak about yourself in a more capable way. Like, instead of "I can't do this" or I wasn't able to stop this from happening," you need to start changing the language you speak to yourself with to be more "I can do something about it. The problem is I need to learn how." Not "I don't know how," as in like that's the conclusion. "I don't know how to do this." It's "I've yet to learn how to do it." So it's I will conquer, I will succeed. So I hope that helps a little bit. And as a little example of how this can sort of play out. So it might not be the best example, but let's say you get pickpocketed, but in more of a case of someone, you got a rucksack or a backpack, strapped onto your back, and they've come along with a knife and sliced it open and robbed you. So if someone cuts your bag open, you find out after the event. How are you to know this would happen? But upon discovery, you'll be aware of it happening going forwards, right? So having this knowledge and you being now angered by it, justifiably so, but having this knowledge that it can happen, therefore implies you are taking, because now when you go out, you'll be more aware to watch out for people closely following you behind in proximity, that they could potentially cut your bag open. Anyway, you'll be more astute or aware of your surroundings, and thus you're taking better responsibility of yourself. So although it has happened in the past, um, with this abuse, this crime or whatever, that's transpired, and this realization, you can see now that you have the power to prevent it in the future. So it's not your fault that you didn't know what you were dealing with. In terms, going back to the narcissist, it's not your fault you didn't know what you're dealing with, leading up to your discovery. But now that you know, you can be more responsible for yourself, and instead of being like a victim, like helpless and like there's nothing I can do, these narcissists just come and enslave me. I'm powerless to push them away or run away or anything like that. They're not, and unless they literally kind of like tied your legs together. I'm sorry, I've got these. I'm using Google Chrome and notifications. I need to somehow turn those off. I'm sorry for that. notification sound interrupts. Unless you're gagged and bound and literally, you are sort of held at gunpoint or something. Yeah, well, the narcissist doesn't really have any power over you. You can walk away, you can stop engaging, go no contact. They can scream until their face turns blue, and if you just take no notice of it, I mean, how do you force someone to give me your attention? So there is a complicity, a compliance. There is a backwards and forwards interaction. So as much as you might feel like you don't, as much as you like to think that you're powerless at defending against narcissists, or you're with a narcissist and there's nothing you can do, if you're brutally honest with yourself, you'll realize a lot of that is you, again, without realizing, or without being, like, not none the wise, but without the due diligence, you are the one who hands over the power to the narcissist, and because also they can deny the accountability of having forced you to do it. It requires your participation. So what that really means, also some more empowering encouragement for any of you who feel helpless in these situations, is it reveals that this power or capability has always been there in you. It's just you didn't know or didn't realize the importance or significance of it. But hopefully now you do. So be more connected with your core and this energy that you're so willy-nilly just dishing out. I mean, you don't realize that you're disrespecting yourself in such a way. It's like love, people need to take better care of it. It's something that, or respect, it's not just given out, it's something that should be earned. So if you're just giving it out to the narcissist who hasn't really earned it, then you're devaluing what respect means to you. It's not as sacred as it should be. And this is basically a lesson that things that should be important to you, like your respect, like your ability to love, like your ability to trust people, should be taken better care of and guarded in a sacred kind of way. And so it's okay if you want to say that I was wrong about some things, but what's important is realizing that I can learn from all this pain and the mistakes that I made. It wasn't all for nothing. Where it becomes wasted and lost is if you start adopting the more victim-minded mentality, because now you're not really making any progress, are you? So I hope that covers that and answers your question there, PJ Camel, if you're listening. So to the moderators that I have, and etc., if we have people that maybe you don't like, you disagree, there's drama or whatever things are going on, if they have legit questions, let it pass. If they're being troublemakers, or they're trying to be I don't know, snarky or something like that, then that's a different story. So I'll just quickly gloss over the chat, and I think we can begin going into this topic. Good to see you on Unwanted Contriver. Single Town Bachelor, good to see you as well. Okay, so we're going to be covering co-parenting and its many forms. Now, let me get my documentation up on the screen for me to read off. This was a topic inspired by one of you fine gentlemen, but I know many of you have similar experiences. I mean, I myself, for a time being, was in this pickle, this conundrum. Now I'm going to have to approach this because of the variations with people's situations. I'm going to have to approach it in a kind of generalized way, and this isn't going to be a definitive way of going about things. This is just some ideas, just some thoughts, things to consider. Not all of it's going to apply. and there might be stuff I miss out, but you know, we'll scrape together what we can. So as mentioned, so there's a lot of variation. So the number of children, how many children are we talking about here? Are they boys? Are they girls? What sort of age range? Are whether or not you're sharing a house with the co-parent, or are you separate? And if so, how far away? How you got to consider how the arrangements are being made, what duties are being divided, and other factors that can create complications. Like, is there drinking? Is there drugs? Is there other crime activities? Are there additional partners, additional family members like grandparents, sort of sticking their nose in and telling you what to do? So there's all sorts of factors that can play out. Now, quite often we call it co-parenting, as in, like, I'm not sure what the co is actually short for, like cooperating. But I mean, it's going to end up coming down to what we can kind of coin a term as counter parenting, because you're going to have to undo the damage that is being done. Well, this is the sort of stance you'll probably initially take, but as we go through, it won't necessarily. Hopefully, it become more evident that it doesn't necessarily have to be you versus them, and because you're creating a battlefield, which isn't going to be healthy for children growing up, even if you are fighting the good fight, as it were. So we're gonna start off with how you're going to be bashing heads with one another, but hopefully towards the end you'll learn the art of fighting without fighting, which is what I think is the better way, really. Just my opinion. You of course do whatever you feel is best. And obviously I'm talking as if, so we're the partner of someone who is maybe not a full-blown narcissist, but they're showing signs, or they're not really cooperating and you're not working as a team in order to raise these children. Now, there is another fella out there who was talking about narcissistic parents from the child's point of view, but we might have to cover that as a separate topic. But it's kind of in parallel with this discussion, so you can kind of adapt it maybe to your circumstances. What might have happened is that you're the child of narcissistic parent / maybe two parents, and now you're in a relationship with a narcissist. So it's like, dang it, narcissists everywhere throughout the life. And hopefully this talk will provide a bit of understanding why maybe yourself or the children are being treated a certain way. And when we have understanding and a bit of context, it helps to calm our emotional turmoil, because obviously the emotional aspect is going to play a huge part in all of this. So it's a battle on many fronts, my friends. And you're all commendable in having to deal with this. It's not something that really, parenting on the whole is already a rewarding challenge. It's a noble thing. It's something what I regard it as something, it's very honorable, and but it's not a walk in the park, obviously, and it has its ups and downs, and it's taxing and stressful and draining and all that sort of stuff. But to then make it even more difficult when you have a partner who isn't got the same values as you, makes it unnecessarily more challenging. So that would infer that if you had the ideal solution, if you've got someone who is a narcissist or someone who is abusive, toxic, or just it's just I mean, people, you can have disagreements and just basically two people just don't get along. But I'm talking about someone who is damaging, who is destructive and harmful. Then the ideal solution is to try your best to get full custody if you can. But this isn't really talking about single parenthood. This is talking about co-parenting, where there are bonds and connections and ties are established. So you might not necessarily be able to break those ties. That might be the first point of thought or exploration you might want to consider. It's like, can you actually, is it possible to get full custody, or is that off the table completely? And if so, then you can save yourself some time and energy and not entertain the idea any further. But it could be a possibility in the future. In my circumstance, I was never expecting to be a single dad, but when I realized that my partner was just not doing it, is not going to change or do things for in the child's best interest, and have, even with that realization, I was still trying to co-parent in the very beginning, and I knew that I cannot do this. So the decision I had to make was either I'm going to get full custody, or I don't know, like I have to give my kid over fully to the alleged narcissist, because there's just no way I can maneuver, coordinate, manage with someone who is defiant and is wanting to make it as complicated as possible. So that's another tough decision to make, where sometimes the best course of action might be to, instead of you getting full custody, is to hand over full custody to the other parent. That's a very painful one, because it's it's a stab in the heart, really, and it's like the feeling of you're handing your kid over to someone who is abusive. How can you make that make sense? Well, the general studies, or from what I gather from other places, is that if you do that and you step away, I mean, I know it's very hard to imagine getting to that point. So you'll have I'm going to take this obviously from a toxic mother and the father who has the best of intentions. Obviously, this could be the other way around, but speaking as a guy from experience and whatever, this is the model we'll be using for our discussion tonight. So if you're the guy with the good intentions and you're having to step away, knowing that you're handing your kid over to someone who is abusive, you're going to have the guy's emotional struggles. He's going to be a mess. I wouldn't be surprised, So, and I wouldn't blame him. And he's going to probably be likely very a strong inner critic. Like, I can't, self-doubt, self-hatred, ashamed, guilt, and feeling ashamed to the max, and feeling like a betrayer or a traitor. So it's going to be very hard on him. But if you think of this as a long-term strategy, then if you are a guy listening, and this happens to be the sort of circumstance you're finding yourself in, if you're able to think long-term that no, you are not turning your back forever, indefinitely, and that you have betrayed or you have abandoned your child. What you should try and see this as is a chance for you to prepare and fortify, get yourself in good shape, mentally, physically, diet wise, and all this, financially, and everything. Um, but if you're out of that toxic dynamic, in a way, you're on sort of air quotes like safer ground. You're in the sort of sanctuary, and as painful as it is that the child is stuck in hell with the abusive other parent, there will come a point, in theory, that this child will realize that something isn't quite right, and that this situation isn't normal. And it's a little bit like enduring more pain to have that lesson learned. I know it sucks. I know it's terrible to say, but if the it's like the level of abuse, because if you're not in the picture, so you sort of with you being present, you kind of dilute that toxicity. So the child, if there's two of you, two parents, the child isn't experiencing just full blown abuse. There is the well intended side of things that kind of dilutes the poison, which means that the agony can be prolonged even further. However, if you are removed and now the child is just, you know in the deep end with toxicity and abuse, provided they can survive, that's another sort of challenge. Then the narcissist may end up driving the kid away, and so when the kid comes running back to you, they will realize that things are a lot different. So it's a gamble. There's a bit of fingers crossed and hoping for the best. Um, but not any one option or route you want to take can. You're doing the best that you can. So we shouldn't be critically condemning people for whatever choices they make, because in the heat of the moment and in the desperation, um, we're having to use the emotion. We rely on our emotions, so we can't really hold that to account as such. What we can do, speaking and discussing it here as we are, is to try and let some of the critical and logical um, observations and awareness seep in a little bit to try and quell some of this emotional turmoil. When you can calm your emotions and regulate them, you're clearer in mind. You can make better judgment decisions. So there is no golden way of going through this, and it's going to be a tough period of time, and for the children, obviously, it will leave them with scarring most likely. Um, so we have to get out of our head the idea that we can somehow wave a magic wand and everything is going to be bliss, even if even if things change and the narcissist is now gone. Like in my case with my kid, it's just me and my kid now, and things are a lot better, more stable, more organized, more structured, more predictable, more safer. We catch up on milestones and all this sort of stuff, but that doesn't mean the thoughts, the memories, the emotional attachment, because obviously my kid doesn't have a mother, and there's the damage from that. But for all intents purposes, we're very fortunate. So the lesson for us is basically to be grateful for what we have and count our lucky stars, and to sort of just persevere and just try. And that's all really anyone could ask of any one of you. So don't beat yourself too hard. Don't think that you're a failure. If your heart is in the right place and you've got good intentions, then in my mind, in my book or whatever, that makes you a good parent. It doesn't matter if you f up. It doesn't matter if maybe you've got some undesirable traits either. Like, we're not perfect. The mindset of perfection is the mindset of a narcissist. So enjoy your imperfections in a way. Anyway, I'm waffling on quite a bit. That's quite a long introduction. So let's talk about the children. That's the main focus of all of this. This is why you're a parent in the first place. So what you can expect, so be on the lookout for, and what you can expect to see in your children will be for them to be emotionally heightened at times. They might have trouble with stress, anger, be frustrated. There might be a lot of self-doubt, self-blame. The kids will probably have low self-esteem. And there may be times when they're mirroring the narcissist. And this would be so blatant when, have you ever seen those photos where the parents dress up exactly, or they dress the child up to look exactly like the mini version of the parent, like the mini me? Well, there you go. So that's like a huge, obvious mirroring. You and I are no different. We're the same. You're the small version of me, meaning that the kid hasn't got their own life, but is the child version of the narcissist. So if ever you see that, I mean, that's a big red flag. I'm surprised that's not actually more. I mean, people socially, like on social media, they think it's cute. Oh, look, I dressed them up as a mini me. But from the way I see it as, oh Lord help. So when you spot these things happening, anyway, like when you start picking up on these like subtle clues, and it catches your attention, and you're able to sort of identify it, then you can start to address or counter parent. But you can address these. Well, you can address it in a way like a doctor would a wound, right? So if you go to the doctor and you say like, my hand hurts, well, the doctor's not going to be looking at your ear now, is he? Or he or she is going to be looking at your hand. So you identify the potential wounds, these red flags, and now that's step one in addressing them. Work out what you need to do then to mitigate. So yeah, we can see with the child will start to display symptomologies, and that will clue you in to what the narcissist has been meddling with. Like, obviously, if their self-esteem is very low, well, you can kind of you can put a bet on that the narcissist has had something to do with that. Like, why hasn't the narcissist tried to raise their sense of self-esteem? Or if there's a lot of self-blame and self-doubt, you can bet your bottom dollar that maybe the narcissist has something to do with that. So in which case, you, to try and reverse this wound, this damage, would be trying to raise the child's self-esteem and to reassure the child that it is not their fault. They are children. It's still fine to make mistakes, and this is how we learn. And so you try and basically, yeah, like you're going to try and heal these wounds. Now, because this means that the child is fundamentally unstable, there's going to be a lot of confusion. And again, thanks to the narcissist loves a situation of confusion and instability. So yet another indicator of where you need to clarify and make it more clear for your child, and to try and have some stability. Because with stability, then you can have trust. And you'll see how all of this sort of stuff, as mentioned in other streams about, survival instincts, impulsivity, the lack of trust, they all tie together. So we're having to address all these red flags in a unified or in unison. There's no point just fixing, for example, like the self blame and thinking that the rest will follow and no problem, handy dandy. No, you're going to have to work on every red flag or area of wound in unison, in gradual increments, to bring the child up in a unified, solidified way. And it's obviously this isn't going to happen overnight. So um, it's the regularity of parenting fundamentally. It's what parenting should be, really. You help your child. You start teaching them how to use a knife and fork. You start teaching them how to use a toilet. You start teaching them how to dress themselves. You start teaching, well, you would have already have done anyway, taught them how to walk and talk. You start teaching them how to read. You start teaching them how to write. And you just gradual, because they're not going to get it first time, and it's going to take commitment and effort. And these are the things that the narcissist won't really be wanting to do. They may do it, but quite commonly, from what I'm seeing, the more mid-range narcissists, they won't. They expect other people to do the upbringing of the children. So they become reliant on babysitters. They become reliant on their phone and iPads. They become reliant on relatives looking after the children. They become reliant on you as the other parent to do all the upbringing. And that worked in as a anecdotal, that worked in my favor. So there is opportunity when some of this abusiveness, like, so what I'm just talking about here is neglect now. So neglecting your parental duties, where yes, it's damaging for the children, but it's almost like you're being a narcissist, but if you're the one who's providing the upbringing and the support and the stability for the child in a compensatory uh, compensatory compensatory, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but you know what I mean. Then when the big day comes, where you hash it out, you can be like, well, but in my case, it's like, well, I was the one who was feeding. I was the one who was doing the shopping, the cleaning, teaching to walk, teaching to talk, reading bedtime stories. So you can't really say that I was being the bad parent when what was mum doing? Like nothing. So that's like the narcissistic undoing that they don't realize can come back as karma in a way. So there's no way in my situation that the mother was going to be able to really take the child away, because if the mother was absent. I was already basically a single dad, even though the woman was in the house. And it got to a point where it's like, you know what? If you just leave, I'll probably find being a single dad actually a lot easier than having to second guess what's going on in this house with you around. So I had no, in terms of backlash or conflict, it was very minor in comparison to a lot of what you gentlemen are going through. So this is what we can be anyway expecting to see in the child or the children themselves. Their emotions, their instability, frustrations, angers, being torn apart like a rag doll, being passed off to you as a chore, and being taken away for fun times and photo opportunities as of when it suits the narcissist. Now you may see in the child, or you may hear some expressions from the toxic parent, which is kind of like emotional blackmail. Things like, "Do you love mummy?" It's kind of like implied that you have to say yes. especially if the child is very young. Um, the child needs love and is hoping to receive love from both parents. So that kind of like, do you love mummy or do you hate mummy, um, is putting immense pressure on the child. And we'll come back to this point later on, but it shuts down the child's ability to speak honestly and authentically because of fear, and because the love that they want is being held hostage, or it's more like a ransom, or both, really. It's like, do as I say and do as I basically do as I command and make me happy, please me. Otherwise, I'm not going to give you love. So the kid bends over backwards, but never really receives the love. What may happen is that the child becomes spoiled instead. So the kid is bribed, and to spoil a child is like spoiling a fruit. So you are rotting a child, and I think we're already aware, when you're spoiling, they become entitled. There is instant gratification, so there's no lessons in appreciation, no lessons in delayed gratification. There's so the child becomes more entitled and demanding, and the treats escalate. They want more and more and more expensive items, so there is no limits. Um, but so what should your response be? Your response should therefore be not to out bribe the narcissist. You don't want this to be a competition of you buying treats and the narcissist buying treats, and you are now doubly spoiling the child. What you can do instead, again, in my opinion, it's up to you if you want to do this or not. You can teach value in other ways, the appreciation for the smaller, finer things in life, um, and giving that the attention rather than what's big and shiny. You could be poetical about this. It doesn't even have to cost you anything. A simple sunset walk by the river is something that me and my kid like to do. It doesn't cost a penny, and it's quality time. And it's poetical. I feel I see it as, it's philosophical. It'll be those kind of things that become the memories the children will hold so dear. They will remember those sunsets. They will remember the small attention to detail that you gave things. They're not going to remember the toys, are they? They're not going to remember. Oh, and even if they do remember, it's not going to be really hitting the soul or the heart. They might even realize, oh yeah, when I was a kid, I was given everything my heart desires, but there's a sense of emptiness in those words, as if it means nothing. I've heard people speak to me when delving into their family history. They believe they were loved by their parents, and I don't know, if I can't remember if I was that intrusive to say what makes you say that. But the reason why they feel they were loved by their parents is because mummy or daddy or whoever it was gave them everything they wanted. Now, to me, I hear that and I think, but for this person, this is what they call love. So buying materialism, instead of being there as a parent, as a human being, instead what matters was having things that you wanted as a child. And obviously, what a child a child wants at that age is going to be a lot different to what they might want when they're older. Like a kid might want bubblegum, or they might want candy or the biggest lollipop there is. But when you're a grown up, I don't really think that's going to be what you want anymore. So there's a bit of a perspective shift as the child grows older in terms of value. And you can see how at first it was simple to pacify or to make a child happy by simply giving them a chocolate bar or something. But as they get older, no, it's not going to be enough. But so that memory thing anyway. So giving your kid quality memories that they can hold dear and cherish. The thing is, the narcissist does something similar, and we call it imprinting. But those kinds of memories are what they will use in order to form a PTSD trauma bond. So they use these memories and incidents to, we say imprint, but it's to scar in an emotional trigger. So let's say mummy wears a particular fragrance or perfume, and the kid now grows up to be older, and every time they smell some perfume, it reminds them of their mum. So you can see how this wasn't really, and fond memories or not, but this isn't exactly a cherished memory. This is something that is irking the kid. I don't know if you guys would know what irking, like bugs. It kind of, it scrambles their mind and puts it into like a frenzy, because now suddenly they're triggered, and they're being, it's like a flood of emotional good and bad all mixed together, and confusion, riding the waves. So it could put them into a tailspin. Let me just have a little pause there, have a sip of my tea. How is everyone finding this chat so far? Am I rambling too much? Shall I just cut cut to the chase? All right, I see something about beef. People need to chill out. Can we just put that aside for the time being, or take it outside, or something like that, so that we can just focus? We're here. We're all here, even if we are enemies or whatever. We can all find ourselves in this situation, and I'm hoping that this can be of help to all of you, whatever side, from whatever walks of life you may come from. Even if we had a narcissist come to this channel to want to learn, I mean, I'm not going to stop that. If a narcissist wants to come to the channel and be a dick, then yeah, we'll kick him in the balls and get him out of here. But if they actually got some legit reason, and they actually want to show progress or want to turn a new leaf, so to speak, then who am I to stop them, eh? I mean, I know we can have an argument, is narcissism curable or not, but we have to give them, at least try and give them a chance, even if we know maybe deep down that it's a false hope. So let's continue then. So basically what I'm saying to people in the chat is just cut it out. You don't need to go back and forth. Just happy thoughts, everyone. A bit of meditation. So going back, so what can you do with all this? What you can provide the child, you could be an example. You don't have to explicitly stand there in front of the child and say, no, I'm make it too obvious. I mean, it's kind of not very tactful anyway, but in your actions you communicate, body language and stuff like that. So through your actions, and not necessarily your words, you can demonstrate stability, you can demonstrate structure. You look on the flip side, the narcissist will hate that. They like chaos, they like the dramas, and they like springing things out of the blue. So the only stability the narcissist really wants is their control. So you see how self-centered the narcissist is. It's all about serving the narcissist needs. But if you're like essentially ignoring the narcissist, like a fly in the room, it's there, but it's not really stopping you doing your thing. It might fly in your face every now and again, but you kind of just swat it away. You don't really get bent out of shape over it, and you carry on with your purpose of being a reliable, dependable source for the child that they can feel safe and secure and comforted by, then you're doing remarkably well. So a little nudge and a wink to not beat yourself up and feel like you're a failure. Like if you're able to maintain a core stability despite what's happening around you, you're already succeeding by far, where many have unfortunately not been able to do so. So remain calm, keep your cool, keep your composure, try not to be distracted or pulled out of your sanctuary, because that's one of the things the narcissist would love to happen, is for you to become erratic and out of control and feeling totally lost and helpless and crumbling into a pile of ash. So we want to prevent that from happening. And if we tie that into what I was saying, to addressing PJ Camel's question at the start, that's linked to that as well. Because if you are to crumble and fail, at what point do you realize that you let it get to you? You let it penetrate your sense of security or well-being, or however you want to phrase it, and you allowed it to cause havoc in your system. You don't need to let that happen. The reason why that happens is because of learned helplessness, because in likelihood you don't know what to do, so you collapse, you implode. But with this talk being presented tonight, hopefully you realize that even if you don't necessarily know what to do, all you really need to know is stay true to yourself and to not compromise your integrity. If you can maintain that for the time being, things will become more apparent in due time. So as a personal example here, while I was going through the world being flipped upside down, I had no idea about narcissism. I had no idea about the manosphere, especially, like in MGTOW and things like that. But I was beginning to join the dots, so to speak. And in the back of my mind, one of the things that kept me sort of persevering was knowing that I am going to figure this out. I don't know how, I don't know when, but there is no effing way that I'm going to fail my kid and yeah, that's the wrong choice of word. But I'm not going to allow this abuse to continue with my kid helplessly being pulled along like a rag doll. So just that simple mantra, determination, it propelled me to get into the bottom of this. What on earth am I dealing with here? And I think at that point, it's probably when I went to my local doctor and said, "Doctor, either my missus is going crazy or I'm going crazy, because one of us isn't thinking right here. And if we can't get her into a therapy or to see a counselor or something, then book me in. At least I'll find out if it's me that's going crazy." And that's what ended up happening. So I was the one that went to therapy, and well, it was more like a consultation. I wasn't actually being given any therapy. I was meeting with psychologists and counselors and psychiatrists, and they were kind of perplexed and mystified with what they were dealing with, as in me. And what some of you might be aware of, when you go to counselors, what can happen is that the counselor is like a secondary gaslights. They re-traumatize you if you're not too careful. So these therapists, these psychologists I was seeing, were trying to make me second think, like, well, could it be that maybe your missus is blah 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 blah? And I was like, no way, no. One, because I already thought of that possibility or something like that, or two, no, because that won't explain then why this is happening, that is happening, and from what I'm observing and what I'm beginning to learn from external sources is that this is showing more and more signs of cluster B behaviors or something like that. So they weren't uh, intentionally trying to gaslight me, but um, I wasn't going to let that happen. I was adamant that yes, I might book myself into these therapy sessions or these consultations, um, but don't get it mixed up as if I truly believe. Like when I said either she's crazy or I'm crazy, don't be fooled into thinking that I actually thought I was being crazy. I just needed a confirmation that it wasn't me, because I was following the notes, following my observations, seeing I was continuing to be a dad, and it was my partner who was acting odd, doing weird things and just appearing to be someone who's having a breakdown or something like that. I mean, at one point, I tried to attribute to it like maybe she's working so hard that she's having a mental breakdown. So I didn't really have any. I hadn't lost faith in myself, in my abilities. I was losing faith in her. But yeah, so I can't remember how I went off on that tangent. Anyway, let's move on to the next point. So you can teach rules and boundaries to your children, and teach not just the rules and boundaries, because that's what a narcissist would do, but you take it a step further and you teach why they're important. You teach the significance and the lessons of how it's good to have rules and boundaries. You might not, from a child's perspective, you might not like it now, but you'll have some appreciation as you grow older. So you're providing a like a supplement to give even more to your child than just simply following basic guidelines of how to parent. And obviously, like, the narcissist won't be doing any of this sort of teaching. They'll do it in a style of obedience. Like, these are my rules, these are my boundaries. You, my child, must obey me and don't piss me off, otherwise I will punish you. So that's not love in the slightest, is it? And the thing is, the narcissistic people, they have a tendency of intentionally being vague. They deliberately want to be obscure and to encourage that confusion and to create misinterpretations as well. So how this is effective from a narcissist point of view is that it teaches the children to be mind readers. So the children now have to think in advance how not or how to care for their narcissistic parent. The children don't realize that they are caretakers, and obviously a child being a caretaker isn't a good thing. But this is what the narcissist is doing: is training these kids to be able to predict the type of care that the narcissist is going to require. So they have to mind read. They need this ability. And as a little side note, note that this is what the empath learns, unfortunately, how to mind read. And they make the mistake of thinking that this is some unique skill, like a power, that, oh, I can read how you feel, and that means I'm more attentive to your needs. Well, why is it they've got this skill? You can see they learned this skill through nefarious reasons. Yes, it might help them to be more connected with people. Not knocking that. I'm not saying that is a bad thing. It's good to be able to connect. It's good to be able to have empathy and to relate. But when you understand why this skill was learned in the first place, then you see that it's a skill that derives from toxicity, unfortunately. So this is what the narcissist does to their children, is to train them to be mind readers, to be caretakers, to walk on eggshells. You might hear that being said sometimes. They do that with the partner as well. So you can never really predict what sort of mood the narcissist is going to be in, which which helps the narcissist keep you under control. Because if you're walking on eggshells, you don't know what is going to set them off. That means you're going to have to be careful going forward and proceeding. And this is music to the narcissist ears. And when you're being careful, by the way, and doing all this, thinking about them and putting them first, well, what are you also doing? That means you're not putting yourself first. So so in order to mind read and to predict and walk on eggshells, you have to sacrifice your sense of self in the process. You can't have both you and them as priorities. Only one can be a priority. So if they become the priority, then where are you? You're pushed aside. Or the child, where is the child in all of this? The child doesn't even exist anymore. The child is not allowed to be a child. The child is not there for the sake of just being a child. The child is there to be a caretaker. Is there to regulate the narcissist emotions. It sucks. This is why it's abuse, and this is why narcissists are terrible parents, because they don't really want to do any parenting. So now, so let's talk a little bit about the age ranges. So a young kid, a baby, narcissists love. So you might think, why does narcissists have babies then? They see it's very popular with them. Well, because it's like a new toy, and when it's a baby, it can be shown off like a trophy. This is the prize. Look what I've done. This is my achievement. Ta-da! I am now by title, a mother, sort of thing. So there's some virtue in this, and there's the ability, if you want to get more on a sort of spiritual side of things, where the narcissist is the creator of life. So by being a mother, they get a God complex. I create life, and later on, they have a tendency of wanting to take life, unfortunately, and they will destroy any life they deem fit or unfit, whatever. So they are the bringer of life and the creator of death. Very powerful, more powerful than God himself. This is the mind of the narcissist. Because why would they be beneath God? Um, and a quick tangent: when they go to destroy a beautiful life, that in part is a insult to the God creator. It's like you think you're God up there in heaven or wherever it is. This is what I'm going to do to your beautiful creation. I'm going to destroy it. So this makes me more powerful than you, God. So that power complex, I mean, it's through the roof. Anyway, so narcissists, when babies are babies and toddlers, etc., like the narcissist has a habit of delaying the milestones. They don't want these children to grow up, because as the children grow up, they become more difficult to control. So it's important that while the child is still young, that the conditioning takes place, so that as the child does get older, they cannot escape the narcissistic web. So what? Oh, by the way, about that God thing. So what we can now, God, children naturally think of their parents as God. You brought them into this world. You are the source of everything to them. You are physically bigger and powerful. So for all intents and purposes, you are God to the children. But we should be teaching our children, like, hey kid, like, listen, like, I'm not God. Like, um, I'm just a mere mortal. One day I'm going to die. Like, depend. Don't be teaching don't be saying that to your baby immediately. Like, one day I'm going to die. You're gonna stress them out. But the idea that, like, look, I'm human. I make mistakes, and it's okay. Like, so um, we're trying to protect our children from this sense of grandiosity and perfection. Because one day that child, if they continue to think that you're God, they're going to grow up and they're going to think that they're God. It's like, no, son, daughter, no. I'm not God and you're not God. We're very fragile, vulnerable human beings, and you know, it's miraculous that we're all alive. Um, but it's a wonderful thing at the same time. So uh, don't be too disappointed by that. It's kind of like know your place and be humbled by it. It's a good thing. And obviously, this won't work well with the narcissist because they like to feel superior and will want to induce anxiety and fear into the children. It's like, do as I like, going back to that obedience. It's like, do as I say, follow my rules, my boundaries, or I will punish you with the power of God. This is why the kid is like crap, helpless to it. Right, I'm on to the next part. What can you do? Let me just check over the chat. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, we shall proceed. So what can you do with all this going on? Well, so expanding on that structure of stability, being a reliable source of support and comfort, to be non-judgmental to the children, to be open and available, to want to actually listen to your child, to stop the world for your child. Your kid wants you. It can be quite annoying at times. Like, dad. It's like, what is it? But it's like, understand your kid wants you for a reason, even if it's a trivial little thing. Attend to that need. Otherwise, they'll find other places to get that need met, and then you'll be complaining that your child is out gallivanting with gangs or something like that. And it's because, well, maybe if you were there when your kid wanted something, they wouldn't be turning to gangsters to fill that need for them. Maybe I'm being a bit hyperbolic there, but never mind. So you can keep things clean for them. Begin with, it shows that you want that having a hygienic, cleaned environment. Not only is it a good, principle of life, a bit of Jordan Peterson, clean your room, but it shows that you care for your kid. You want your kid to have a good environment. You want them to eat well. Now the narcissist might be cleansy. Is that right word? Cleansy. It might be clean. They could be very strict about that. Actually, it's like, you moved the remote control. How dare you? This perfect order I have in this home has been ruined. So they can be over the top with the cleansiness, but it's because they're seeking that sort of perfection. So what ends up happening is, what the narcissist sort of produces in a way is, it might be a clean environment, but it's also a sterile environment. It's got no life in it. Now, hopefully, with your sort of approach to being clean and organized and tidy and all this, is that you can kind of like add a little extra touch through your care. And that's going back to that sort of point about paying attention to the smaller things in life, the finer details, and it'll be those memories that the child will hold dear as they grow older. So if you're cleaning up, and I don't know, you'll have to find your own kind of creative, imaginative ways of being cute. Like, one of the things I like to do with my kid, I don't know, it's not really a tidy up thing, but if I'm tidying up the Lego, I'll take some of her figures. I'll take them into the kitchen, and I'll prop them inside the cabinets, holding like I don't know, the biscuit packet, or trying to climb into the biscuit packet or something, or on top of the cereal box. So when she opens the cupboard door, she's like, "What the? How did these little Lego men get in there?" So it's a little prank, but I'm sure she's going to get her revenge on me one day. But I'll know that's her way of being cute, as it were. And I can't be angry with her for doing that, can I? So it's that little silliness like that is it matters, in my opinion, anyway. And so the narcissist is making a sterile environment. It's for the sake of appearances, and it's nothing really to do with the child's well-being. It's you can see how it's a manufactured. If we look into the fantasy sort of way the narcissist sees themselves, it serves into that sense of like higher status or upper class or something like that. It comes under the category of appearances and image. Usually a lot of times people report that narcissists are actually quite dirty people, but when it depends on the kind of narcissist. Sometimes there might be dirty people, but if they know they got visitors coming around, now suddenly they're speaking with a posh accent and getting out the fine china or something like that. Anyway, let's talk. So what more things could you be doing? Just some ideas anyway. So you could be reading children's stories, and this is one I enjoy doing a lot because I get to learn something as well. I'm a big kid at heart, eh? Or maybe I'm emotionally stunted. So you could be reading stories, and you can actually be going into talks with them, explaining these stories, asking your kid, how does it feel? What do you think about the story? Now, so what is it that in comparison, what does the narcissist do? They may read stories, but for them, it's probably more like a chore, and they probably resent having to do it. And if they've got that kind of attitude while they're reading, the child will pick up on it, the tonality and the attitude, the lack of. There might not be any energy. Like when you might be reading a story, or myself, and you got characters in this story, you might try and give them a bit of a personality, put a little bit of a funny voice or something. Like if I'm reading lines that are written by a girl, maybe I'll start trying to sound girly and be like, "Oh, how are we doing today?" or whatever. And then if there's a big bad monster, I might look like the Gruffalo, Whereas a narcissist will be just like the claims be sterile. Their reading will probably be very sterile as well. And that's not exactly engaging. You're not engaging the child when you're doing that. And why would a narcissist want to engage a child? You know, they're just probably doing it because it's a chore, and they don't want to get a slap on the wrist and be told off by wider society is that they're not reading stories to their children. Or maybe they saw it on TV and thought that, oh, this is how you're supposed to be a parent, or I better copy that and emulate it. But I don't understand why. I just do it because that's what I've seen being done. And the general consensus is that this is what you do as a parent. So I'm just trying to blend in, the chameleon in action. Now, another thing that you can do is to try and avoid letting your kids just assume certain behaviors are normal. Now, this might not be very evident. Well, from the child's point of view, they're oblivious. They don't know what's right or wrong. They just see what's normal. And so this can come from external factors, like from the child's friends or peer group. They might learn, I don't know, that they might learn that their friends might do a bit of stealing, so the kid thinks that stealing is normal, and in order to fit in with the group, the kid starts to steal. So you need to kind of be at some point in the child's upbringing, I'm not sure when would be a good point, or you kind of sprinkle in these nuggets of information, but you get the child to hopefully start to engage a little bit of critical thinking. You get that gear beginning to turn, so that the kid starts to question, is this right? Is this wrong? They might not have the answer. What matters the most is that they're actually thinking about it instead of just doing for the sake of just doing. So then when there's actual thought going behind these actions taking place, um, becoming accountable. So now we're beginning to plant the seeds in a way of becoming accountable and responsible for these actions, because now we are creating, instead of just subconscious behavior, there is actually, it's like, hello, someone's actually home. Like the kid is now beginning to wake up. There is a conscious beginning to form, which is beginning to take over the subconscious, and is going to drive, is going to dictate the course of action the child will choose, what decision, choices the child will choose to make, instead of just copying people blindly, you know. And then when you tell them, ask them, why did you do that? Like, you know, like you hurt yourself there. Why did you do that? And they're just like, oh, I don't know. You know, it's like that's not going to achieve anything. Now, so this is, we're stepping away from co-parenting here, because obviously this could be friends that are a bad influence, other family members could be a bad influence. So a battle on many fronts. It's not just the narcissistic co-parent you have to worry about in that regard. Now here's one that you might not like hearing, but with the experience and with, I don't know, I'll just say it, and we'll see how it resonates with you. So really, what this comes down to when it comes to co-parenting with a narcissist is you shouldn't, is you should be trying to raise your kid how you would expect to do normally. That, if that makes sense. It's the narcissist who is the one who is trying to deviate and go down an alternative path with this upbringing. So as long as you stay true to your form and you have the awareness of subversion happening, you've got a, what do you call them? Thinking like infidel, but yeah, you got a spy, or not a spy, what do you call it when you got a like a mole, well, subversion anyway, if you know what subversion is. Yeah, you got someone who's trying to undermine you. And if you can still provide like the adequate parenting for your child, and not beat yourself up over it, then you know you can only do what you can do, right? You can only do what's within your power and capabilities, etc. And you shouldn't really have to. It wouldn't be fair on you and the child that you would have to exert yourself additionally unnecessarily. So why should you? So you try and basically keep on track, and render the influence of that narcissist. You nullify their power. So it's not trying to eradicate them. It's just saying that whatever games that the narcissist wants to try and play, it's not going. It's not going to really impact the child in any way, and that can only really happen if you maintain what it was you originally set out to do, which is to raise a child. As long as you stay to that as a basis to your mode of operandi, like, I am going to raise this child with or without you, and it doesn't matter what you try and do, you are not going to prevent me from raising this child, then there's not much the narcissist can really do. So you need to have, and you need to have some faith and trust. A lot of this comes with risks, but you have to be willing to take those risks, which means you have to also be willing to take those losses. So one of these risks will be that you have to trust your kid to be able to make the that to make the better choice, to choose for themselves. Now, obviously, the age range may come into play here, but if you've been able to give your child what you can, then you can have a bit of faith that it will be enough to protect them. It might not prevent them from getting injured, but the child's essence will be preserved by your efforts, by your contributions. So it's important that despite all the chaos and carnage that's going on, that you still deliver as a parent should to their child. Otherwise, the child really is like at a disadvantage at that point, because they're not receiving any parenting. So we'll use what I said there. I hope that gives a bit more confidence in your ability as a parent to know that what you're doing, even if you might not feel like it's the right thing, as long as the love and care and compassion is present in you, then do not lose hope and do not lose faith. Do not think that your kid is going to turn out to grow up to be a narcissist or something like that. You know, what you have and what you'll be able to pass on to your children, if we go back to that spoiling and gifts and value, that is the biggest, greatest gift you can possibly give to your kid, is your heart and soul. That's not something they're going to take lightly. Okay, so let's talk more about us as the parent now, because we can only be helpful to the child if we also take care of ourselves as well. So in all likelihood, you feel tied to the narcissist. You're trauma bonded. You have, after all, created a life with this person. And depending on the level of communication you may have with this narcissist, you should probably already be aware that you need to limit what you say and disclose to them. Because if you tell the narcissist, say, what you're planning, I'm planning to take the kids away this weekend for a camping trip, then don't be surprised if the narcissist will try to interfere with that. And going back to the previous point, so we're already starting off in a bad position, because obviously a child really requires two parents to be there in unison, working together for the child's sake. So it's already bad enough that one parent is toxic. So that leaves you as the remaining parent trying to provide a good, wholesome upbringing. But if you're being messed around, if you're having to counter parent, then you are unable to function fully as the remaining healthy parent. So where does that leave the child? That means from the child has been reduced down by one parent, and the remaining parent is now half functionable, if that. So they've only got a quarter of a parent when really they need two full parents to bring them up. So you need to be mindful that despite all the good intentions you may have, the child will likely have some degree of damage, unfortunately. That doesn't mean they're effed up in the head and that it's all screwed. It just means you need to take into account and be mindful and careful and supportive of your child. Now, when you do have time with your kid, if you're having to share the custody or your time allocation, you want to try your best, if possible, not to have the narcissist invading your mind while you're with your child, because obviously that means you're not present. So you're going to have to try and compartmentalize that until the child is not in your company. Otherwise, you are allowing that narcissist to infiltrate and invade your quality time with the children. You may hear underhanded, snarky comments from the partner. Like in my case, I had comments like, "I know better than you when it comes to parenting. You know, I am their mother," sort of thing. So don't try not to let this sort of dissuade you or get under your skin. Just understand why it's being said. It's being said to hurt your feelings and to make you become triggered and angry and put self-doubt into you, and for the narcissist to maintain and exert their sense of control and authority. So if anything, if you look at it for what it really is, it's a it's a small subtle sign of a little bit of desperation, because someone who is obviously very secure and confident about themselves wouldn't need to be making such statements like that, where it's like, I need to tell you that I know better than you. Really? Why is that? Sounds like, who are you trying to convince, me or yourself? So if you do hear things like that, um, refrain from your instinctual impulsive behavior to become argumentative. Understand why it's being said and what purpose it serves. Now, things can start getting a bit tricky, so you might also hear advice such as, it's probably wise, if you are dealing with a narcissist, that you start keeping receipts and you keep a diary. Just in case things start to go into a direction, like legally, or you have to now suddenly prove yourself. So you want to be taking note of things like who's taking the child to the appointments, who is providing the actual caregiving, like washing, feeding, doing the homework with the child, who handles the responsibility and in what sort of way. And that can become quite a drain and taxing. So the best sort of advice I can give is just start getting into a habit of it where it doesn't become a burden to do. Just referring to my notes here. So I got here, train yourself to interact with a narcissist in a diplomatic kind of fashion. So it becomes, unfortunately, like a business. You only really say what you need to say. You try not to divulge too much information that could jeopardize your position in any way, or things that you might be having planned, because whatever you say to the narcissist will be used as ammunition. They also take a diary in a sense and keep receipts, so you have to be careful with what you say, because they will use that against you if you're not careful. So you need to remind yourself that you're dealing with, because obviously this might be someone who you once really cared for deeply. So you have to keep your emotions in check, and you may need to remind yourself, this isn't your spouse you're dealing with. This is someone who is dishonest and with what they say, and has other reasons why they say the things that they do. So this can kind of get a bit surreal, because what might start happening is you start coming across as a bit of a fraudster, as like an actor, because you're having to censor what you're saying, and so are they. So you got two people who are sort of like play along play acting, being cordial and civil with each other, but both you and the narcissist have a inner dialogue going on of, who's doing what here. It's almost like two conversations are being had at the same time: a verbal conversation or interaction, and a sort of mind game interaction. It's a psychological, where no words are uttered. So you might have noticed there's been a lot of referring to countermeasures of the narcissist, and it kind of reflects that a lot of these. I'm going to sneeze. Hold on. Sorry. Excuse me. You may notice that you might start questioning yourself: am I being the narcissist here? Because here I am having to keep a diary, having a sense of what I say, and what I'm doing could be construed as playing games or something like that, because I'm trying to plant seeds just like a narcissist plants seeds. Yeah, but they're trying to plant weeds, and you're trying to plant a rose bush or something, So there are differences. The difference is you didn't want it to be like this in the first place anyway. So and you're not trying to hurt people, which means hopefully you're not wanting to hurt the narcissist partner. That could be a tricky one for some people, So you'll probably have some self-doubt yourself, like the kids have self-doubt. You'll probably have worries, anxiety, stress. You'll probably feel drained, emotionally tired. You're probably wondering what you can do, and you feel helpless. And hopefully this guide and conversation we're having is trying to address some of these issues. So on that note, try not to despair. This will cheer you up. Like, if you realize that many of us actually came from narcissistic homes, and look how we turned out. We turned out okay. So there's hope for the children. Don't worry too much. Indeed, very empathetic people can come from narcissistic homes, believe it or not. Some of the most caring people can come from very abusive, toxic households. And it's because of that abuse and toxicity, it's shaped them to be so caring and empathetic, which the narcissist doesn't like. But we'll cover that in a second. So the narcissist operandi. Why does the narcissist have children then? We sort of mentioned it before. And what purpose, the function? If children aren't meant to be human beings with their own independence of childhood, individualism, and they're supposed to be props and utensils, so what kind of purpose do they serve? Well, they serve to regulate the emotions of the narcissist. They are what we would call as extensions. They are the right and left hand of the narcissist. Go forth, a bit like a flying monkey, go forth and do my bidding. They are props, like trophies we mentioned. They are sources of supply. So, like, I'm now a virtuous mother thanks to my trophy baby here, so I can get adoration, applause, praise by having a kid. I think Amber Heard is accused of having a fake baby, or a renter baby, because she recognizes how indispensable that will make her. So it increases your value. So there's a lot of residual benefits from having children. A lot of guys would love to have children, not because they want to have children, but because they want to be seen as fathers, unfortunately. So children are a wonderful source of supply, and if they are groomed and conditioned well enough, they will become future caretakers. The narcissist can steal the success of their children. So you need to make sure, like a narcissist will speak very proudly, like, "Oh, my son or my daughter is the head cheerleader or the head captain of the basketball squad or whatever." So it's like bragging rights. So they say it's no longer the child's achievement; it's become my, as their parent, achievement. My kid, my son has done this. So from your point of view, you need to make sure the attributation, you need to attribute the kid properly. It's not my success; it's son, daughter, it's your success. Well done to you for doing that. You know, you should feel proud of yourself. It's not like I feel proud. I'm so proud of you. That's a selfish way of putting it. Sometimes you might have someone compliment you. They might say, "Oh, your kid is so cute," or "Your kid is funny," or "Your kid is very smart," or something like that. And to this, so in my opinion, never say thank you to someone who does that. You say to them instead, "I'll let my kid know you said that. So I'm not taking the credit." And 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 also, like, don't address this congratulations to me. You're telling the wrong person here. If you want my kid is over there by the swings, you go and tell them yourself. Now, narcissists like to live through their children and deny them independence. So that's another thing you need to counter if possible. So encourage your child to have independence, and um, try to encourage uh, to not allow people to live vicariously through them, which goes back to what we were just saying about the stealing their success. And another one is that the narcissist wants to be able to pass on the the, the dysfunction of narcissism. They would like to ruin the children. What? How dare the child have a good life when the narcissist isn't allowed, doesn't have one? Um, so it's important that the not only pass on the narcissism to their children, but amplify it, magnify it, so that the kids are even and the kids end up being even more dysfunctional than the parents. And then the parent can feel better about themselves because it's like, oh, I don't know what happened to you, son or daughter. You know, you're totally messed up. Was it can't be my parenting? It must have been your other parent, and they can blame shift and put the kid down. You know, and while saying all of this, there's no like, well, your life is in a complete mess. I'm going to try and help you out. It's the sort of ridicule, um, and just put the kid down even more, like a scapegoat. So that is something you to be on the lookout for, because if you are like, if the healthier and happier the kid is, then the more the narcissist will have disdain and contempt. So if you're doing very well, if you're succeeding in actually turning the tides, and um, the kid is child or children is really showing good signs of a healthy upbringing, then this is going to infuriate the narcissist. So that'd be something to look out for. The sort of, how dare you go against God? You're going to fear God's wrath. Um, Hopefully, it won't make any difference, because if you've got self-esteem, that is your shield. So it doesn't matter how much the narcissist may spit venom at you. It will only make the narcissist more bitter and alone as they get older. But that's something to watch out for anyway, because obviously the narcissist will become more miserable. They'll be pouty, contemptuous, stropping around, and they'll hope, pray that you'll have sympathy for the narcissist and you will return. But it is a trap. So what the narcissist parents does or tries to achieve is they want to have the children be automated. Now, we were talking earlier about critical thinking. They don't want kids to be thinking. They want automated responses. Um, they want to be able to the children to be puppets on strings. So to have an automated child requires the child to be conditioned. And as such, so not only want to have independent thoughts and opinions, they won't be able to. They won't be allowed to speak freely. That means they're gonna have to, unfortunately, be a little bit dishonest in how they speak because they can't speak openly and authentically. So getting some truth out of a child who has been conditioned like this is a bit difficult. Ask the child, try it. Like, ask the child, like, is your mum or dad, like the alleged toxic person, are they treating you nicely or are they mean to you? Well, the kid most likely is going to say, no, they're wonderful. They're not going to speak bad because they fear the punishment and ramifications. And obviously, you shouldn't be doing that to a kid anyway. Like, putting them on the spot with such line of questioning. Don't do that. The way you would really, if you wanted to, you try to extrapolate it through. You try to allow the kid to talk freely and deduce and extrapolate. Like, I think this kid has some sort of fear. They feel a bit hesitant to open up. I wonder why. But never try and pressurize a kid in that way, where they feel like they have to answer you in. It's just. I hope you understand. Just don't do it. Right now, with all this abuse, conditioning, etc., I spoke before that sometimes kids can actually grow up to be very empathetic. Well, they can also grow up to. They can actually, some of them rebel. They have enough. They've seen it. They might not know exactly or be able to articulate what's going on, but they know deep down that this isn't right. This isn't love. It doesn't feel good. Love isn't supposed to hurt, and what they feel is a lot of pain. So they may rebel. But who are they going to turn to if they're especially very young? So they may speak back, give a bit of back talk to the parents. But the narcissistic parent will disregard, or will ignore, will not count the rebellious, the pushback, and basically the child's pleas, fall on deaf ears, which further lowers their self-esteem and confidence, because here they are, this moment of actually fighting for themselves, and they were put down. What the conditioning eventually teaches the child is there is no unconditional love. And the style of which love, if the child wants to receive love, so the only way they're going to receive this is through transaction. So that's the love language, or the style they learn to adopt. And this transaction, they learn more and more that to receive love, they have to become something they are not. They have to become performers, actors. They have to become yes people. And this isn't who they truly are to themselves. So the transaction is, if I want to get love and I need it, otherwise I die, then I have to sacrifice my sense of self, and that's the cost, continuing on. So if, as the healthier parent, if you are able to provide that love, real actual love here, not conditional love, unconditional love, you're giving the child, then they should hopefully, in theory, realize they do not need to make this transaction. They do not need to sacrifice their sense of self, because they are able to receive love without any conditions. They don't have to pretend to be anyone else. They don't have to perform in any particular way to receive this love. This love is there and available whenever and every time they need it. So that's a big FU to the narcissist. Now, unfortunately, one of the other sort of paths a child may grow, so you've got a child who may grow to be very empathetic. You've got a child who may become a bit rebellious. They might not like authority. excuse me, sorry. They might not like police, for example. It's not necessarily because they don't like the police, it's because they don't like to have this authoritarian control, this perception of that they're being controlled and they're going to be punished for what they're doing. But this ultimately means that a child's path isn't exactly, a straight line. It's very clear. It moves about. They're on it's a meandering type of path. And unfortunately, if not careful, the child could also become abusive themselves. Like if the narcissist managed to get their way, like the mini version of the narcissist, which is terrible to see, unfortunately. Now, some other things to factor in. So the age, the appropriate age of the child. So older children will want to individuate and separate, and the narcissist won't like this very much. You, however, can encourage them to individuate, to have that independence, to be able to learn to look after themselves and be responsible for themselves. And when this happens, usually the narcissist becomes a bit resentful of the children. They ideally want the younger child. But the resentment is also like jealousy, because children are younger, they've got youth behind them. And the narcissist is getting older and older. Children tend to be very popular amongst other children. So there's that jealousy. Children have ambition and want to pursue a life of their own. And typically a narcissist, because a narcissist is a slave to their emotions, they don't really feel like they've got a life of their own. So this dynamic, as it changes, as it evolves with the child, the narcissist starts to regard the children becoming more of a nuisance and trouble. And you may see things where the narcissist starts to offload the child onto you a lot more. Now, you, from your perspective, you might be thinking, hey, this is wonderful. My narcissistic ex is being very nice to me, allowing me to see my kid a lot more, sort of thing. Makes you second think the narcissist. Another little slip up. But it's not it's not because the narcissist is wanting to be kind to you or the kid. No, it's to serve a purpose. I know it might not necessarily be nice to think that there's always some kind of agenda at foot, but unfortunately with a narcissist there is. So the child is being offloaded onto you, probably because the narcissist is getting stressed out in some way, and is wanting to take care of their emotional needs some other way. So you could be expected to do all the parental duties, and when it comes to like the fun time or whatever, family gatherings or something like that, now suddenly the narcissist wants the kid back, and you're having to obey their commands or rules or whatever. So try not to be fooled with the time allocation set, particularly if it's in the discretion of the narcissist. Right, so sexualization is another big one. So we see lack of boundaries, right? A lack of awareness. So obviously that means kids are going to be exposed to material that isn't really appropriate, and the kids become sexualized. Now, the narcissist won't see any problem with just barging into a kid's room and invading their privacy. They don't like bathroom doors being locked, for example. They'll have no problem undressing in front of their child, or having the child undress in front of them. They will have no problem really reading diaries because you're not allowed to have secrets from the narcissist. So that kind of shenanigans you can expect to play out. Doesn't mean it happens all the time, but don't be surprised if you see across the boundaries where things are inappropriate. And you know, they're hoping that you're going to okay it and normalize that behavior. And it's like, no, like my kid. No, like I feel like a uh, Scrooge or whatever, but I'm not allowing my kids to dress up as a little hosky. You know what I mean? Like you cut that out. He wants to wear makeup, but I'm like, no, you're already pretty enough as it is. Why do you want to sort of ruin that? Or look like a clown? You know, so with that kind of lesson with the makeup, I'm hopefully giving her a bit of uh, self-esteem and confidence that she shouldn't need to feel the pressure of having to change her appearance or feel like she's not pretty without the makeup or something like that. But I don't want her. Careful, Billy. You just said I don't. Like I don't think it's in her best interest to be parading around like that. You may experience your child, being compared to other children. Oh, so and so got an A. Where's your A? Or so and so does karate. How about you do some karate? So just be a bit of. I mean, the kids might even be compared with one another. So you start having the golden child, and you have the scapegoat. You have the silent child. So roles are allocated to children, and just because the golden child might be given preferential treatment doesn't mean that that child isn't also being abused. It's abuse in a different form. Now, a quick point about the sort of difference, I guess, between a narcissistic mother or a narcissistic father, just for the purposes of being a bit balanced here on the channel. The narcissistic mother will tend to sort of make her sons into son husbands, and any daughters she may have, she will probably sexualize them and then sabotage them and ruin them, because there's much more of this like a sisterhood anger, catfighty sort of way of looking at it. But the sons will be feminized and not they'll be masculized in a way that benefits the narcissistic mother. We have to remember that whatever way the upbringing takes shape, the narcissistic needs of control and fuel and supply need to be prioritized. So as long as those needs are being met, then however the children shape up, as it were, is tailored for maximum extraction and to suck out the blood as best as possible. Now, a narcissistic father, I don't know as much information in comparison to the mother, but I'm guessing he's more of a authoritarian type of hardcore militant, more violent probably type of dad. And he would probably want his son, if he has a son, to be successful in a tyrannical kind of fashion. So he will enjoy his son being top executive, ruthless, without compassion or remorse, and the father will have this vicarious through via proxy extraction or success fuel by how successful the son is. If the son has lots of cars, lots of property, lots of money, is rich, lots of women, then the dad is living through his son in that sort of fashion. If he has a daughter, then I wouldn't be too surprised if he would want her, like daddy's girl, by his side as long as possible, as a potential kind of like maid caretaker in the future, or if she breaks away to create a household of her own, he is able to, without question, just turn up at her door and be like, "Oh, granddad's here." Well, if she's got kids as well, so or dad's here, the narcissistic father is here, and just sits down on her couch, helps himself to a beer, and starts treating her home as if it's his own. Um, and that's about what I've got. So I've got a bit of a closing paragraph, and then I'll have a look at the comments. Hope you guys aren't falling asleep. So I'm basically just covered the sort of day-to-day complications. I mean, going into adult life as children grow older is another can of worms. I mean, all sorts of things could happen. I mean, how children go into relationships of their own, their sense of self, the choices they make, all this sort of stuff will be deriving from their childhood experience. So it's kind of like we want to nip it in the butt if possible. And obviously, with all this going on, like, don't forget to allow the children to be children. That they're not projects that that you need to success. You need them to have successful lives because you're in this battle with a narcissist. So the only way you'll win this battle with the narcissist is if your children are successful. That's the wrong way of looking at it. So allow your kids to be kids, you know, because once you only get one childhood, and once it's gone, it's gone. And it'd be hard, you know, you can't go back in time. So what I'm trying to say there, I suppose, is try not to be equally toxic in your fight against the narcissist. You know, like, I'm going to be the anti-narc or something like that. That's no better. You're just as bad. You know, with all that, your anti efforts of trying to protect your virtue, you know, you could end up suffocating the child. So you know, try not to focus on having the ultimate control. As long as you're providing the good examples, as we mentioned earlier, and they're not exactly, they are big step, like, you know, to have empathy and love for your kids. It's kind of like it's a small thing, but it's also a big thing. If you know what I mean. It's not like I'm giving you a bucket list of things that you must do. It's kind of like keep it simple, stupid, but make sure that you keep it simple, but make it count. Stupid. I'm just joking. But yeah, so you can mitigate any potential trouble later down the road and minimize the damage. It's more about giving the children the tools to better equip them for the life they have ahead of them, right? You don't want to be living their life for them. You want them to be able to live their own lives. And bear in mind, you know, it's not just this narcissistic parent that the kids have to deal with or will encounter. There will be others in the future for them, long past your lifespan. So this is why it's important for them to have the tools rather than just the solutions. And in that way, they can adapt to the situation as they choose to see fit. So a little of acceptance has to fit in here somewhere. You can only do what you can, and some of this stuff will simply just be beyond your control, and that shouldn't be something you should beat yourself up too hard about. But that idea of acceptance, and especially acceptance that things will be out of your control, is a lesson the narcissist will find hard to accept. Anyway, so try your best to enjoy your life, allow your kids to enjoy their lives, and enjoy your time together. And I am finished. So I'm gonna look at the chat. Everyone's still alive. I've been talking your ear off for 2 hours. Oh, here we go. Oh, all this time I had, I forgot to. I was meant to get rid of that screen share. Hold on. Share screen. Oh, how does this work? All right. Hold on. Yeah, I was meant to have that throughout this whole conversation. I see Outlaw, Mito Outlaw is here, GM's here, Chris is here, RP Pope, good to see you all. Introverted Alpha, cool. First time coming across you, I think, so it's a pleasure to meet you. One Fast Stack, good to see you. Is there any questions I missed? If there is, would you kindly type in question, capital letters, followed by a colon, ask away, and end that with a question mark, if you'd be so kind, and I could address them. And I hope, so in closing with this general topic, maybe there might be something there that would be pertinent to your situation or be helpful, or maybe post situation and has given you a bit of clarity or given you a bit of perspective on what has been taking place that you found useful. I think the main key points are don't let it drive you insane, and just do as you. If you stay true to yourself and serve the role as a parent that you should be doing, then not allow yourself to be pulled off to deviate from your objectives and as a parent kind of thing, then you should be okay. Obviously, it's easier said than done, and it's a lot of pain and emotions involved. I'm not trying to minimize the significance of all of that. It is deep and important stuff, but we have to be careful not to allow it to consume us and eat our souls and devour us, because that is what the narcissist would want to happen, and we would be failing our children if we allowed that kind of thing to get the better of us. I'm not really seeing any questions, so I think we'll close it there if that's all right with everyone. So enjoy the rest of your day or evening. Be kind to yourselves. Be well. Oh, is that a question? GM, you have a question, GM. Hopefully, GM can answer you there, Pope. Oh, there you are. Yes. Okay. So take care, everyone. Have a good night. Be well, and try and be a bit nicer to each other, even if you don't get along. Just, I don't know. Just try and be nice. So, adios.